As the new department chief, Mark arrives early and sets up the workspace. He breaks protocol by removing the old group pictures with Petey, even though the new ones with Helly weren't taken yet. Once everyone has arrived, Mark begins training Helly on how to refine macro data. Her job is to look at the numbers on the screen and place them in different categories. He explains that over time, she will develop certain emotions for certain numbers, which will guide her in deciding which category each number should go in. Seth then enters the office, pushing a table filled with delicious food for Helly's welcome party. One of the activities of the party is that each employee takes a turn to share something about themselves. When it's Helly's turn, she feels lost, as she's only been alive for 10 hours and doesn't really know anything about herself. And so, instead of talking about herself, she keeps thinking of ways she could communicate with her outie to convince her to quit her job at Lumon. Now it's Mark's turn to share something about himself. He confesses that he broke protocol earlier as the pictures with Petey made him feel sad and amplified his fear of not being able to run the macro data refinement department as well as Petey did. Moreover, he expresses concern for Petey's well-being, fearing that he might be deceased. Seth interrupts, clarifying that deaths only occur to the outies and never within the workplace, and emphasizes that the innies should be grateful for this. By the end of the party, the 4 refiners finally take a new group picture. Suddenly, Helly moves away from the group, writes a note on a piece of paper, and heads to the elevator so that her outie would be able to read it and understand that her innie doesn't want to work at Lumon. The team tries to stop her from doing so, pointing out that the elevator has a detector that ensures there are no messages transferred from the workspace to the outside. Regardless, Helly takes the note and runs through the hallways into the elevator. As expected, the elevator door refuses to close, and an alarm goes off. The alarm attracts the attention of Mr. Grainer, the stern head of security. He makes his way to the elevator and tells Helly to follow him, but is interrupted by Mark, who tells him that the whole situation is his fault. Not wanting Helly to be punished, Mark claims that he forgot to tell her about the detector. This leads Grainer to take Mark to the break room, where employees are punished by being forced to recite a long statement of atonement. They have to repeat it as many times as it takes until the polygraph test shows that they are being honest in their atonement. Later in the evening, Mark's outie is on a date at a restaurant with Alexa, his sister's midwife. While getting to know each other, Alexa starts asking about the details of Severance, questioning if living 8 hours every day of which he remembers nothing affects his mental health. He replies by implying that it may have actually been the reason he underwent the procedure in the first place. After dinner, Mark and Alexa take a walk and come across 2 young individuals protesting the severance procedure. Mark, slightly intoxicated, argues with one of them in defense of the procedure and Lumon, embarrassing himself in front of his date. They then leave and he returns home. Later, Mrs. Selvig visits him with cookies as a peace offering for the trash bin confusion. He thanks her, invites her in, and they have a friendly conversation before she leaves. The next morning, a sober Mark reflects on the events of the past evening and realizes that he too is unhappy with the fact that he's severed. He decides to go to the address that Petey had given him to find out what Lumon is up to. He fakes being sick and calls Seth to inform him that he won't be able to get to work that day. In the MDR department, the innies wonder why Mark hasn't come in. While working, Irving, who's perhaps over a decade older than his colleagues, starts dozing off and suddenly begins to hallucinate. He sees a thick black liquid that starts to cover everything around him. This is a feature installed in his implant to prevent him from nodding off while working. Horrified by the black liquid hallucination, Irving yells out, alerting Seth that he might have been falling asleep. Seth escorts Irving to the wellness center for a meeting with Miss Casey, a severed friendly woman who doesn't have any ill intentions towards the employees and only tries to help improve their mental health, much like a therapist. While waiting in the reception area, Irving runs into Bert, the head of the optics and design department. The two quickly start to bond over their shared love for art. Soon after, Miss Casey invites Irving to enter the wellness room with her. She greets him warmly and starts sharing vague yet delightful details about his outie, such as his generosity, physical strength, and swimming abilities. However, Miss Casey cautions Irving to enjoy each fact equally and warns that showing any strong emotional response towards a particular fact could cause the session to be cut short. Back in MDR, Helly still doesn't understand her job. She is unable to categorize the numbers on the screen, as none of them trigger any specific emotion in her. Additionally, she starts to wonder what these coded numbers are. Dylan points out that none of them actually know, and all they can do is come up with theories. After finishing his session, Irving returns to MDR. He starts telling Dylan about his encounter with Bert. Dylan panics as there are rumors that the O&D staff are violent and have previously attacked the MDR staff, resulting in numerous victims and even reports of cannibalism. Helly interrupts their discussion as she has finally developed an emotional connection to the numbers shown on her screen and is now able to categorize them accordingly. In the outside world, Mark arrives at the address. He discovers an abandoned shed and finds Petey inside. Petey explains that even though he is now unsevered, he still doesn't know everything about Lumon, as there are several departments and none of them know what the others do. However, he has managed to draw a map of the severed floor, though there are parts he doesn't know. Suddenly, he starts getting a headache due to their reintegration procedure he underwent to become unsevered. Once the pain has subsided, he plays a voice recording for Mark, revealing what happens inside the break room. In the recording, Petey can be heard repeating the atonement statement exhaustedly over and over. Afterward, Mark takes Petey to his home and tells him he can take a shower and then sleep in the basement, where no one would be able to find him. While taking a shower, Petey is overcome with a splitting headache and begins to cough up blood. Additionally, his consciousness starts to flicker between his innie and outie personas, leaving him disoriented and confused.
You